Steve McQueen was dressed and ready to die. He just didn't know it yet. It was 8:47 p.m. on August 8th, 1969. Steve stood in his Hollywood Hills bathroom, adjusting his collar in the mirror. Dark slacks, crisp white shirt, leather jacket draped over his shoulder. He looked good. He always looked good. The King of Cool had a dinner invitation at 10,050 Cielo Drive. And he was never late for Sharon Tate. His car keys felt heavy in his palm as he walked toward the front door, one foot in front of the other, hand reaching for the doorknob. This was the moment, the single moment that would determine whether Steve McQueen lived to see sunrise. But his hand never touched that door. The phone rang. 3 short rings that changed everything. Steve paused, keys still in his grip, and looked back at the kitchen wall. The green rotary phone seemed to mock him with its insistence. He could ignore it. He should ignore it. Sharon was expecting him. Jay Sebring would be there. Wojciech Frykowski. Abigail Folger. All of them waiting at the elegant house tucked into the Benedict Canyon Hills. But the voice on the other end wasn't selling insurance or asking for donations. It was soft, feminine, and very persuasive. A woman Steve had been seeing, asking if he wanted company for the evening. Not at Sharon's house, at hers. Steve looked at his reflection in the hallway mirror. The dinner invitation versus an intimate evening. The social obligation versus personal desire. For most people, it wouldn't be a choice at all. You keep your commitments. You honor your word. But Steve McQueen had never been most people. "Tell Sharon something came up," he said into the phone, already loosening his collar. "I'll catch up with everyone next week." The leather jacket hit the floor. The keys went back on the counter. The King of Cool had made his choice, and death would have to wait. What Steve didn't know was that 15 miles away, 4 strangers were climbing over the gate at 10,050 Cielo Drive. They moved like shadows in the darkness, their eyes empty, their hands gripping a knives and rope. They had been sent by a madman who called himself their leader. Their mission was simple: kill everyone inside and make it as gruesome as possible. Charles Manson had given them very specific instructions. Go to that house where Terry Melcher used to live. You know where it is. And destroy everyone in it. Make it a real messy one. But Manson's real target wasn't Sharon Tate. It wasn't Jay Sebring or any of the others who would die that night. His real target was sleeping peacefully across town, completely unaware that he had just escaped the most infamous murder in Hollywood history. Steve McQueen woke up on August 9th to his phone ringing again. But this time the voice on the other end was panicked, breathless, barely coherent. "Steve! Oh God, Steve! Are you okay?" It was his agent, his words tumbling over each other in a rush of terror and relief. "What are you talking about?" Steve asked, still groggy from sleep. "The house, Steve. Sharon's house. They're all dead. Everyone who was there last night. They're all dead." The words hit Steve like a punch to the chest. He sat up in bed, suddenly wide awake, his mind trying to process what he was hearing. Dead. All of them. That was impossible. He had just talked to Sharon 2 days ago. She was pregnant, glowing, excited about the baby. Jay was planning a vacation to Mexico. They were supposed to have dinner, laugh about old times, make plans for the future. "What do you mean dead?" Steve asked, though part of him already knew he didn't want the answer. The details came in fragments over the next few hours. Phone calls from friends, from police, from reporters who had somehow gotten his number. Sharon Tate had been stabbed 16 times. Jay Sebring's face was so mutilated he was barely recognizable. Wojciech Frykowski had been shot twice, struck over the head 13 times, and stabbed 51 times. The killers had written messages on the walls in their victims' blood. Steve listened to each horrific detail and felt something cold settle in his chest. These weren't random murders. This wasn't a burglary gone wrong. This was something else entirely. something personal, something targeted, and he was supposed to have been there. The king of cool, the man who never showed fear, the actor who performed his own death-defying stunts without blinking, began to shake, not from sadness, though he grieved for his friends. He shook from the terrifying realization that death had come for him and missed by mere hours. Steve spent the next week in a haze of disbelief and growing dread. He went through the motions of his daily routine, but everything felt different. Every shadow seemed dangerous. Every stranger looked suspicious. He jumped at sounds that never bothered him before. The funeral was held on a bright Wednesday morning at Holy Cross Cemetery. Steve wore his darkest suit and his heaviest sunglasses, but nothing could hide the haunted look that had settled over his features. As he walked among the mourners, shaking hands and offering condolences, he couldn't stop thinking about one thing. It should have been him in that casket. He was scanning faces in the crowd, looking for anyone who seemed out of place, when a detective approached him. "Mr. McQueen, Detective Williams, LAPD. Could I speak with you privately?" Steve's blood ran cold. Had they figured out something? Had someone seen him leaving Sharon's house at some point and thought he was involved? "Of course," Steve said, following the detective away from the other mourners. "We know you were supposed to be at the house that night," Detective Williams said without preamble. "Your name was on a list we found." Steve felt the world tilt around him. "What kind of list?" "We raided a ranch up in Chatsworth yesterday, place called Spawn Ranch. That's where the killers were living. In one of the bathrooms, we found some writing on the door. Names of people who were supposed to be killed." The detective paused, studying Steve's face. "Your name was at the top of that list, Mr. McQueen. First name written, underlined twice." Steve couldn't breathe. The cemetery around him seemed to fade away, replaced by a rushing sound in his ears. He gripped the detective's arm. "Are you telling me they were coming for me specifically?" "That's what it looks like. Charles Manson, the leader of this group, he had a thing about famous people. Wanted to kill celebrities to make a statement. Shock the world. And you, Mr. McQueen, you were #1 on his hit list." Steve stumbled backward, his legs suddenly unsteady. The detective reached out to support him. "The good news is we got them all. Manson and his whole crew. They're locked up. You're safe now." Safe. Steve almost laughed at the word. How could he ever be safe again? How could anyone be safe when madmen could climb over your gate in the middle of the night and butcher you in your own home? That night, Steve went to a gun store and bought a .357 Magnum revolver. He told the clerk he was going on a camping trip and might encounter dangerous animals. It wasn't a lie, exactly. The animals were just more dangerous than the clerk could possibly imagine. Steve carried that gun everywhere, to film sets, to restaurants, to parties. It lived in a shoulder holster under his jacket, a constant weight against his ribs. His friends noticed the change in him. The easy smile was gone, replaced by a tense vigilance. He no longer walked into rooms casually. He entered like a soldier, eyes scanning for exits and threats. The paranoia consumed him. Every fan who approached him for an autograph could be a Manson follower. Every knock at his door might be his last. He hired bodyguards and had security systems installed at his house, but nothing felt like enough. How do you protect yourself from people who are willing to die to kill you? Steve would lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, replaying that August evening over and over in his mind. What if he had ignored the phone? What if he had kept his commitment to Sharon? Would he have died alongside his friends, or would his presence have somehow changed the outcome? The questions tortured him. Survivor's guilt mixed with paranoid terror created a psychological prison that fame couldn't unlock. Steve McQueen had escaped death by accident, and now he was spending every remaining day of his life looking over his shoulder. Months passed. The Manson trial dominated the news. Charles Manson, with his wild eyes and rambling speeches about race wars and revolution, became the face of evil in America. Steve watched every minute of the coverage, studying the man who had wanted him dead. Manson looked harmless, almost pathetic. But Steve knew better. He had seen what Manson's followers were capable of. Even after Manson and his family were sentenced to death and later commuted to life in prison, Steve couldn't let go of the fear. Prison walls seemed flimsy when you were dealing with people who worshipped a madman. What was to stop other followers from carrying out Manson's wishes? What was to stop copycat killers from finishing what the family had started? Steve's career continued, but he was never the same actor. The cocky confidence that had defined his screen persona was replaced by something harder, more desperate. He threw himself into increasingly dangerous stunts, as if courting death on his own terms was better than waiting for it to find him. His relationships suffered. How do you love someone when you know that being close to you puts them in danger? How do you build a future when you're not sure you'll live to see it? Steve pushed people away, not out of cruelty, but out of a twisted kind of kindness. If Charles Manson's followers came for him, he wanted to die alone. Years passed. The 1970s brought new roles, new challenges, new possibilities. But Steve McQueen never stopped carrying that .357 Magnum, never stopped checking locks twice, never stopped scanning crowds for faces that didn't belong. He had survived the night that should have killed him, but in many ways, he never truly lived again. The phone call that saved his life had also cursed it. He was a ghost haunting his own existence, forever marked by the knowledge that evil had chosen him specifically and come within hours of claiming him. The dinner invitation that almost became his death warrant remained in his desk drawer for years, yellowed and forgotten by everyone except the man whose life it had defined. A simple piece of paper with Sharon Tate's handwriting. Steve, dinner at 8:30. Looking forward to catching up. Sharon. In the end, Steve McQueen learned the cruelest truth of all. Sometimes surviving is harder than dying. Sometimes escaping death means spending the rest of your life running from it. And sometimes the phone call that saves your life is the same one that destroys it. The king of cool had become the king of fear, and no amount of fame or fortune could buy him back the peace of mind he had lost on that sweltering August night in 1969. Have you ever had a moment where a small decision completely changed the course of your life?